into damage assessment for Brother Dan here. Fortunately, God was good to him, and Dan is still alive and kicking. Of course, we got a canopy that comes off pretty easy, but it's all in one piece, and that'll glue back on nicely. I don't know if we want to do something as far as this wrinkly covering back here. You might be able to shrink that and get that on. I'm not sure what they use on these RTF type planes. Okay, looking at the wings first off, we got these off, and it appears that the only damage is that these are things that hold it on, so a little bolt goes underneath there, and that holds the wing in place. So it's totally busted off on one side and the end busted off on the other side. So we'll have to think about whether to try to restore that. We'd end up cutting out some of the covering and having to patch that up. That'd be a possibility. I'm really tempted to just put a bit of a block in where the tube is, and kind of hard to see. But in there, where that tube is, put a block between the tube and the outer skin, and then put a little bolt through into the tube. Now, the problem that I see with that is that this system here has resulted in just simply that little piece breaking, and the rest of the wing looks, appears to be fine, in spite of this huge nosedive that it took. Of course, the wing didn't hit on anything. It was just the force of the inertia of the thing stopping. But it's kind of nice to have a little part like that that breaks in a situation like that, as compared to if I had the bolt into the tube. Who knows what's going to break. It'd be something pretty severe. But that certainly is a very hefty tube that they've got here for the spar and the wing. So we'll think about that. Okay, now onto the fuselage. We've obviously got a major break here in the middle. Everything basically shattered in there. So that's going to be a major rebuild, so we'll probably have to remove covering, most of the way up there, and totally rebuild that stuff in there. Oh, I didn't mention on the wing, you got these little tubes that come out here. We lost one on that wing there. So anyway, yeah, we got some major building to do in there. Through the main part of the plane and where the spar comes in, that's looking very solid. It's very solid where the battery was. This is just a guide that I put in to hold the battery in place. That front part of the battery tray is busted. And then, of course, we got a rather severe nose job to have a look at. So we've taken apart the nose, got the cover off. You can see that this is a fiberglass piece, so that is repairable. Lost a weight out of the nose in there. Yeah, mashed up pretty nicely, but I think repairable. So we've got some balsa that's going to have to get repaired over here. Again, that's doable. Going to have to rebuild the firewall. It doesn't look like the motor shaft is bent, at least not the part that the Outrunner runs on. And kind of it's shaking around, so it's hard to tell on the shaft here, but I don't think that's broken. By the way, with a name like Amazing Grace, how could you possibly let something like this go to the scrap heap? No way. So the engine's been removed. Got the bulkhead out of there. We'll just use that as a bit of a template as far as making a new one. And we got all of the bits and pieces in there. I removed the wing tube and discovered that's bent. In a background where you can see it better. Yeah, isn't that interesting? Fortunately, the fellow that I bought this plane from gave me a spare wing tube, so we can use that. Not quite sure how you go about making one of those perfectly straight again. But yeah, it took a pretty good whack. Well, we're getting deeper into it now, and we've got both sides busted here. So what I think I'm going to do is kind of like when a car gets smashed and they have to straighten the frame. You know, back in the good old days they used to do that. So I'm going to put a piece of timber or something on each side to make sure it's totally straight, and then I'm going to glue these things down in here just to make sure that the fuselage is straight. And then I've got to rebuild. I'll just do a reinforcing bit across this F-29 down in here. Patch together some things here. We've got a sort of a bulkhead to replace in here. We'll fabricate something for that. Okay, so we'll patch these things together here and here. We'll patch that piece in there. And then, yeah, we're going to do a major rebuild job up front. So we'll get stuck into those, and we'll make periodic reports as to how we go.